Hi there, Cosmic family. My name is Leal. I am here today to talk about the astrological energies from the next week from July 13th until July 19th. And the principal event that we have is the new moon in Cancer that is opening the way to the eclipse season. Even if the first eclipse happens in August, this is going to happen in Leo, which is an area of our natal chart in which we haven't experimented eclipses since 2018, and it is the anticipation of something that we are going to integrate in the next 19 months, when the North Node moves to Aquarius and the South Node to Leo. This is in the end of July. But energetically, this period is already beginning, and this involves situations that are pushing us to align ourselves with our most genuine purposes of the soul. I want to remind you that the last week I did a video that is still in the reproduction list below, because what I explained there, it is part of the configuration of this new moon in Cancer. Now I'm going to add other data because we are experimenting a figure that has a great impact both in the collective, planetary, and individual level. This is called the Barbeau basket. This is the name in astrology. All the transpersonal planets are participating: Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, together with Jupiter in Leo. This means that transpersonal planets have been conforming this figure that we call the minor grand trine or the grand sextile that is going to be active until 2028. And with the entrance of Jupiter in Leo, it is that this basket is conformed. Now, in a minute, we're going to talk about how this could be expressed in our own paths. But you have to take in account that every change that involve the grand scheme, both collective as in our lives, are greater processes, and not everything is going to happen in 1 week, but we are going to have manifestations that are going to be the symbol of what is going to be transformed in a very powerful and radical way. And because of all of these things that I've been explaining, you could be feeling very revolutionized inwards and in the external situations too. So I also wanted to clarify that on July 13th, we have the perfectioning of the square between Venus in Virgo and Uranus in Gemini. I talked about this the last week too, because Venus is going through the South Node in Virgo. It is saying goodbye to it because it is about to change, and therefore there is this great cleansing regarding relationships, jobs, habits, and ways of life that we are putting behind. And much of that, what is happening, it is, it is coming to us through unexpected revelations, chaotic situations. For example, with Venus, we could talk about an economical investment that we didn't consider to do, or the need to make a cut and to detach from certain situations. But we are going to go direct with the new moon, and we are going to integrate everything there. So this new moon in Cancer happens on July 14th in the degree 21 with 59 minutes. This is degree 22. So every person that has, planets in cardinal signs close to this mathematical degree, Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, and they are going to Aries, of course, they are going to feel it in a much stronger way. But at this point, we all feel every lunation. So we are beginning a cycle of 6 months, and one of the principal aspects is given with the Sun and the Moon, making this conjunction in the same mathematical degree with Mercury that is still retrograde in Cancer. We have to remember that on July 12th, the Sun and Mercury retrograde had their union. This means that we connected with certain information that is leading to see a situation with a very different perspective. This situation, is going to involve topics very linked with the Cancerian energy. I mean, family, the core in which we have grown when we were children, how those experiences are impacting us now. Topics of the past could be memories of these or other lives that are helping us to understand in a different way experiences of the present. How much we have integrating the archetype of the maternal. I mean, if we are sustaining experiences or making choices that actually represent emotional nutrition, if we know how to inhabit feminine energy that we all have, in the sense of focusing, which is Mercury, in what for us is feeding us energetically, emotionally, mentally, physically, while we allow that life can bring to us what we need, instead of wanting to force certain manifestations. And of course, this also involves the revelation of situations and dynamics with people that could be the symbol of certain emotional dependencies. I mean, patterns of behavior that are not contributing, but many times we sustain because there are these needs of our childhood that weren't managed or even identified or recognized. Other thing that I already mentioned is that beyond that, last week, the sun in Cancer made this square with Saturn in Aries. The lunation is still in Orb with this tension with this planet. So this means that this beginning is involving a decision from responsibility that could be challenging, because we need to face a fear of not being capable of doing what we need to do, or because we need to establish a boundary of something that we cannot sustain anymore and it is challenging to do that, or because we have to accept that there is a process to obtain certain results that requires consistency, and that perhaps we are perceiving very slow, because this is something that could happen with squares with Saturn, and that many times could make us feel very frustrated, or with this fear of not being able to build certain things in our lives. And even though it is true that it's part of the path to let go of many times expectations, things that visions that we thought that we would accomplish on our lives, or of the things that we have constructed until this point. Each one of us has an inner calling that we need to identify, because that is the one that is going to impulse us through the challenges, even if there are moments that we are tired or that we are dealing with many painful lessons. And obviously, this also requires to assume responsibility of observing if we are truly acting in coherence with that reality that we want to create, because many people are telling to themselves that they want to experiment their lives in a certain way, but they are not taking decisions or actions that are coherent, because coherence many times faces us with inner conflicts and with attachments to parts of our identity that are related with people and experiences that we need to let go of. So then we have Venus in Virgo in this square with Uranus in Gemini. The orb continues and is beginning to create a square with Mars in Gemini. So this means that there is a desire linked, for example, with the way that we want to create relationships, or with the way we want to generate resources, or, in general, create a more satisfactory life, that involves approaching things in a very, very practical way, very connected to earth, concrete decisions. And for some people, this is a radical change, or having to detach from certain perceptions and changing from the inside. I'm saying this because at times there could be people that are doing these erratic movements, but they are superficial, and they are truly this escapism of what genuinely can bring new experiences. And other people could be manifesting resistances to do something different, or to put in practice an idea for a project, for example, because of the challenges that implies. So on one side, this could represent having to do this depuration from this tendency of Mars and Gemini to distract in a thousand of focuses, directions, or thoughts that are not adding any purpose, and centering ourselves in what truly is has reality, which is Venus in Virgo. And then with Venus and Mars in a square, you have to take in account that these inner conflicts could be also expressed in people that are surrounding us. For example, when we are avoiding to make a decision, could happen that a person from the outside, from this with this excess of aggressiveness, could show us what we are not doing, how we are not using our force to move forward. This is not to tolerate or justify violence of anyone, but it is to look at ourselves in the external reflections. In other cases, it could be anger or the inner irritability, what is showing us what we need to let go of or what we need to initiate. At the same time, Mars in Gemini is creating this sextile with Saturn in Aries. This is perfecting on July 19th, 17th, July 19th, and it is a harmonic aspect very useful to put ideas into concretion, to see what it truly has possibilities, and to live and to limit and to put a boundary to other aspects or directions that deep down we know that they are not going to open the way. They are only dispersion. So it is also an excellent aspect to establish boundaries, especially those that are difficult for us to establish, because this sextile is collaborating, is accompanying. So we are able to communicate. Mars is in a sign of communication, which is Gemini, and to express those boundaries in an assertive way. Also, we could have positive results from that, or it is an aspect very good to give a structure to a project or open the path through decisions that are being born from our inner authority. At last, we are going to talk about the opposition between Jupiter in Leo and Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. That it is perfected the next week, but we are going to feel it this week in a very intense way. Jupiter is also connecting in a trine with Neptune retrograde in Aries and in a sextile with Uranus in Gemini. These are harmonic aspects. So this is what I was mentioning at the beginning of this video. This is the basket that is perfected the next week on July 19th and 20th. Those days we are going to feel this configuration in a very intense way. It is perfected. But all of this is active from now, and it is going to continue. This is not something that happens 1 week, 1 day. So you can understand this. This configuration is formed by all these harmonic aspects and this opposition, which is a tension, that is not a minor one, between Jupiter in Leo and Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. So there is an awakening, rebirth, a creative potential that we haven't experimented before in our reality and in the social context. That could be very positive, but as we are talking of transpersonal planets, we don't have control over anything. The design of the of the superior plan, it is already operating from this elevated perspective. So this is more about to put energy on the only thing that is depending on us, which is managing our what is happening inside and in our decisions. So with this, what I am trying to say is that there could be many chaotic external situations, I mean, in the world. Things that are manifesting, that could generate an uncertainty that could, that could be very linked with revolution. But we have to remind ourselves that everything has a function. It doesn't matter the perception that we have of those situations, how we are seeing them. I mean, because the opposition between Jupiter in Leo and Pluto retrograde in Aquarius could uncover things that are not pleasant to recognize in ourselves and in the social structures, linked with the abuses of power, with the forms of leadership that are completely selfish, and people that are, the representation of this, with the incoherence between the image of what we are showing and what we are really doing. So the challenge, it is to take the look inwards. I mean, seeing, observing how much of these things that are manifesting in the collective shadow are also part of ourselves. And for example, when we are taking more energy of other people because it is comfortable to do that, that is a form of abuse of power. This could be something or behaviors that we are propelling in our daily lives. How we could have these behaviors towards other people that are that they seem to be this Jupiterian generosity, but truly they are a manipulation to obtain recognition or attention from other people. And then those those other people could be reflecting that in these selfish expressions too. They are not reciprocal. So this is an aspect that invites us to observe if we are defending causes and ideals because we truly want to make a contribution in the world, or because we are attacking other people because in an in an indirect way and direct way, this childish rebellion is a form of seeking attention, from this place. Or if we are defending these beliefs or forms of thought in a very impositive way, dogmatic, closed one, from this lack of humbleness, believing that we are superior than other people because we illusory think that our truth cannot be questioned. And that is already a sign of an egoical and childish behavior. And even if we are thinking that we are in the certain path, or we have a perception that actually can contribute, if something in the external is leading us to an emotional extreme, that is a signal that there is an unconscious shadow projected in the other person. And what I believe that is supposed to me is truly showing a part of me that is not integrated yet. For example, the arrogance of other people could be the lack of self-esteem that we are containing at this point, or the judgment that we do over other people from this supposed moral position that is more elevated, could be lack of empathy, because many times we don't know what the other person is experimenting, or what is how that person is experimenting their own lives, and also could be reflecting great incoherence of what we are sustaining in other areas of life, and we don't have the courage to see that. Therefore, it is much easier to focus in the negative things of other people. This opposition could also invite us to, face experiences that could generate fear, that could feel them as a threat. For example, being authentic in a way that we didn't express before in the face of a person, facing the fear of expressing or exposing ourselves, sharing a talent for fear of the external reaction, or even to stop giving the power to figures that are using intimidation, that are using the fear, intimidation to manipulate and control others in a very authoritarian way. And this could happen, in the individual levels, and we know that there are figures, people that are operating this way in the social structures. So I'm going to end this video here. Certainly, we are going to expand on these topics. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.